All right, guys, welcome back. Now, this is actually one of the most important videos in the Debt Management Basic series because this is your rights as a consumer for credit. So this is Debt Management Basic 4.5, Statute of Limitations, Fair Credit Reporting Act, and Fed Debt Collections Practices Act. So there's going to be about 5 things I want you guys to take from this. And one thing I want you guys to know is what a statute of limitations is. The next one is what the Fair Credit Reporting Act is, what the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is, what a credit attorney is, and what a credit repair specialist is. But before we begin, disclaimer. The financial information contained in this video is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing specific financial advice. You should contact a financial advisor to obtain specific financial advice. And also a legal disclaimer to cover all my bases. Sorry about that, guys. Disclaimer. The legal information contained in this video is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing specific legal advice. You should contact an attorney to obtain specific legal advice. So just to show you guys where we are, we're halfway through the Debt Management Basic series. Once again, this is 4.5. So now let's start off with talking about statute of limitations. So this is actually one of the most universal definitions of what a statute of limitations is, and it goes as follows. A statute of limitation is a law passed by a legislative body in common law systems to set a maximum time after an event within which legal proceedings can be initiated. So breaking down exactly what that means, all you guys really need to know is that it's a law that sets a time frame to start legal action. Now, when it comes to different types of statute of limitations, one of the things that I want you guys to understand is the vast majority of laws actually do have a statute of limitations. And it could be for a lot of different things. There's actually a lot of things that you can do it for. It could be for neglect, so if it causes personal injury, or if it's for wrongdoing, breach of contracts, or one, and that's whether it's oral or written, professional malpractice. You have slander, and most importantly, at least to this video, is collections of a debt. And there's more. So there's pretty much a statute of limitations for almost everything. So you guys are probably wondering, why do statute of limitations exist? And the chief reason is it's done as a way to protect the defendant. So the defendant is the person being brought up on charges. So essentially, I found these from Wikipedia.com, and these are actually really good definitions. So the first one is: a plaintiff with a valid cause of action should pursue it with reasonable diligence, meaning that if you have a valid claim, you should be trying to get it litigated on ASAP. The next one is: by the time a stale claim is litigated on, a defendant may have lost evidence necessary to disprove the claim. And the last one is litigation for a long dormant claim may result in more cruelty than justice. And that's essentially a couple of different reasons of why statute of limitations exists. So now what I want to do with you guys is I want to relay what you guys just learned about statute of limitations and put it on to debt management. So remember, the definition of a statute of limitation is a law that sets a time frame to start legal actions. Now, what we're going to be talking about is how that relates to the collection of debt. And this can vary from state to state and province to province, depending on where in the world you are when you're listening to this tutorial. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the length of a statute of limitations. So remember, the time frame is based on the event. The event meaning the collection of a debt. Now, when it comes to the statute of limitations of the collection of a debt, it usually depends if you're in the U.S., the population of the state. This is a tendency. There's no concrete law about how it works, population density or anything like that. So just to give you guys some sort of context, the state of New Jersey has an SOL for the collection of a debt of 6 years, but the state of Kansas has a 3-year SOL on the collection of a debt. So that's all I have for you guys as far as SOL. What we're going to go into now is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So you guys probably are wondering, what is the Fair Credit Reporting Act? And the Fair Credit Reporting Act is as follows. It is a law that regulates the collection of credit information and access to your credit. My apologies. And this is from this is not from Wikipedia, but Investopedia.com. So you guys are probably wondering at this point, if you didn't understand the last one, is so what does it do? So essentially, what the Fair Credit Reporting Act does is a piece of U.S. federal government legislation enacted to promote the accuracy, fairness, and privacy of consumer information contained in files of their credit reports. And this one came from Wikipedia.com. So now let's get into who enforces the law, and this is the Federal Trade Commission. So if you guys are wondering, okay, so you just said that it's a federal law, so who's going to regulate it? And the regulating body for the Fair Credit Reporting Act is going to be the Federal Trade Commission. So the Federal Trade Commission is also called the FTC, and it's a federal agency that was established that administers antitrust and consumer protection legislation in the pursuit of free and fair competition in the marketplace. So the Federal Trade Commission Act was founded by President Woodrow Wilson on September 26, 1914. Now, if you guys want to know more about the FTC and what the FTC does, for more information, you can always visit their website at F as in Frank, T as in Tom, C as in Charlie.org. So that is ftc.org. So now let's cover your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So I chose about 11 different components to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You can actually get a copy of that particular document in the description below. So if you guys want to look into the Fair Credit Reporting Act, definitely recommend you guys do that one. So let's start off with these four. So the first one is you must be told if information in your file has been used against you. So if you guys have ever, sorry about that, but if you guys have ever applied for a credit card, if you're turned down or declined for your credit card application, you essentially what this means is the lender has to tell you why is it that you were turned down. So if you have if your credit utilization, the amount of credit you're using compared to the credit limit is too high, they have to tell you that was the reason why you were turned down. So that's one. Another one is you have the right to know what's in your file. So the file is your credit report. So as far as your credit report is concerned, if you guys saw the other video, you guys know that I talked to you about what a credit report and what a credit score is. So the file that it's talking about is the credit report, and that's just a collection of information about your credit history, including the different types of debt, the amount of inquiries that you have, and a bunch of others. Now, you are entitled to know what's in your report, and that can be retrieved online if you go to each one of the bureau's websites. The next one is you have the right to ask for a credit score. Now, this one you can ask for your credit score, but there's no provision that says that they can't charge you for it. So typically when it comes to a credit score, each one of the bureaus typically charges you for retrieving your credit score. Okay, moving on to the last one in this slide, and that's going to be you have the right to dispute incomplete and inaccurate information. So if there's information on your credit report that's not right, you have the right to dispute it. This is actually talking about dispute letters, and there's actually a process for that as well. Okay, so now let's move on into a couple of more laws. The first two are going to be for the credit reporting bureaus, and for consumer reporting agencies, they must make sure that the information is correct and delete inaccurate, incomplete, or unverifiable information. So they have no idea where the information came from, if it's not complete, or if it's completely wrong altogether. They have to delete it off of your credit report. Now the next one is consumer reporting agencies may not report out-of-date negative information. So if you guys ever had something like an old credit card that was on your report, you can get them to remove it if it's out of date. Out of date would be if it's past the SOL. So if you had a 3-year SOL for a debt and it went into collection 5 years ago, you can actually ask all of the credit reporting bureaus to take it off of your report. The next one is access to your file is limited. So if you guys know free credit report, not free credit report, but free annual creditreport.com. That one allows you to take a look at all 3 of your credit reports, and you can do it once per year for free. Now, when it comes to that, you only get to do it once per year, and that's what it means by it's limited. And the next one is you must give consent for reports to be provided to employers. So if your employers are going to pull your credit as far as for a job application, you have to sign off on it. If they do it without you knowing, that actually is potentially a violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So now let's get into these last three. These last three I actually really like because they're really good for people who feel like they can't really do anything as far as credit is concerned. And the first one is you may limit, quote unquote, pre-screen offers of credit and insurance based on the information on your credit report. So if you guys didn't know, sometimes there's something called a soft inquiry. So if you guys didn't see that on the previous video, definitely go back and then take a look into that. But there's something that's called a soft inquiry. So pre-screens are pretty much soft inquiries done to your credit in order to make you an quote unquote offer. So the offer is based on the information on your credit report, and essentially the way that it works is they tell you that you've been pre-approved for a credit card. Now, just because it says you were pre-approved, it doesn't really mean that you'll actually be accepted. It's more or less just it's more or less just advertising. And if you don't want to receive them, you can find the 1-800 number on any one of them. They have to have a 1-800 number, and you can ask them to take you off of their list so you do not receive any more credit offers or insurance offers from whatever the company is. The next one is you may seek damages for violators. So this one is actually making any violation to the Fair Credit Reporting Act as a suable claim. So you can sue an employer or a lender or one of the bureaus potentially if they violate your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Now, in case of identity thefts and for active military personnel, there actually are additional rights for them. And I have a copy of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, at least the summary and the description. So definitely recommend you guys check that out and then get some information to know your rights as a consumer of credit. So the last bit that I want to talk to you guys about in the Fair Credit Reporting Act is going to be that your local state has state consuming reporting laws. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that one is on national level, but on the state level, there's also laws that that are there to protect you as a consumer of credit. Now, some laws actually have more laws than, some states have more laws than the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So for one thing, if you guys live in New York, there's one thing that you guys may not know if you live over in New York, and that is if a creditor is attempting to use information to collect on a debt, they have to say to you before you give any information that's the reason why they're calling. So if you guys have ever heard this is attempt to collect a debt, any information you use will be used for that purpose or something like that. That's the reason why, because it's a state law, and it violates your right if they don't tell you what it is. Now, if you guys want more information, definitely recommend you guys check out your state or local's consumer protection agency, or you can also get the information at your state's attorney general. So one of the things I want to talk to you guys about is the credit reporting agencies. You guys heard me talk about them before. Essentially, there's four major ones, and when it comes to credit reporting, the bottom three are going to be the ones that you're looking for. But the Fair Isaac Corporation, this is a corporation that is known for the credit score. So they create the mathematical algorithm, and then that gives you a score for each credit report that you have. But the other ones are Experience, Equifax, and TransUnion. So if you guys are wondering how often they update their systems, just know that a lender reports to each one of the bureaus at least once per month. Now, the information that they report to the bureaus could either be positive or negative. It's not important that it's positive or negative. What's most important is that it's accurate. So if you didn't pay your credit card for 30 days, then if it's negative, as long as it's right, then they're good. But what you guys have to remember is that it must comply with the guidelines of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and it has to be done within the time frame of the SOL, Statute of Limitations. Okay, so what I want to talk to you guys now about is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So now let's talk about the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So this is actually another really good definition. Definitely want to give it up to the guys over at Investopedia. They definitely did a really good job with this one too. So the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is the federal law that limits the behavior and actions of a third-party debt collector who is attempting to collect debts on behalf of another person or entity. So once again, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, is also going to enforce the laws of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And this is a definition that I pulled from them, and that is the law in which prohibits debt collectors from using abusive, unfair, or deceptive practices to collect from you. So now what I wanted to do with you guys, because you guys know who enforces it, I want you guys to understand your rights under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Okay, so here's a couple of points that I want you guys to know, and that it protects you against harassment. So essentially, sometimes what'll happen is a debt collector will know. Typically, when it comes to debt collectors, they know what the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is because they have to abide by it. But what ends up happening is they usually know one or two things. They know that most consumers feel powerless when they're talking to a debt collector, and they also know that most people don't know that there is a Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So most people don't know their rights, and they feel like they're in a place of inferiority. And sometimes they'll even yell, scream, do whatever they can. Threats of violence are definitely one, but it's important for you guys to know that that violates the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So if you guys have ever had an instance where you have a debt collector who's doing any of the following that you see here, they actually are violating your rights, and you can definitely talk to a credit attorney on how to resolve the issue. So another point is that it allows consumers to seek proof that they owe money for a debt collector. All right. So what I want to tell you guys, what I told you before with debt harassment, you guys have to understand that there are also scams when it comes to debt collection. Sometimes there'll be quote unquote fake debt collectors who know about a debt that you have, and what they'll do is they'll present it to you as if they're the debt collector that is in charge of your debt. Now, what you guys have to do if you guys do find yourself on the phone with a debt collector, typically they need to prove two things. One of the things that they need to prove is that you are you, so they'll ask you your full legal name, and then the second thing that they'll do is they'll ask you if you owe whatever debt it is. Now, the main issue here is you may think you're paying off a debt if you do pay them, but in actuality, you're actually just funding a scam. So what you guys have to do in order to protect yourself is to do one or two things, and it could be potentially better if you actually do both. So the first thing that I'm going to recommend that you guys take a look into, well, I shouldn't really say look into, but typically two things that you guys can do is to ask this debt collector to send you written proof that you own a debt. And one thing that I'm going to say, even if you think that this collector is legitimate, you're better off not you're better off getting proof of it before you actually do it, to make sure that you're not getting scammed. Like, remember, protect yourself, guys. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. So now this is a couple other ones. It prohibits disclosure of debts. So if you don't authorize a debt collector to disclose information about your debts to other individuals, you have to understand that violates this act. So if they call you and then they tell your boss that you owe a debt, understand that that is a violation of this act. They're not allowed to do that. And if you guys ever get a situation where you're at work and you have a debt collector calling you at work, understand that is a violation. In most cases, well, I should say in all cases, they know that they're breaking the law, but you have to understand that you have to tell them you want written proof of whatever the alleged debt is, and then just hang up the phone. I tell you, just hang up the phone, because if you don't, what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to use some sort of information on you to get you to admit to the debt. So this is actually very deceptive, and that's also partially a violation of the same act. Now, another one is it also instills Bans on any communications that are before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. So you cannot be contacted at all hours of the night for a debt. Now, another one is it also grants the consumer the right to sue. So if you guys remember what I said before in the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you can seek damages for any violator or violations. Understand with the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, this also does the same thing. So if they do violate it, you're within your rights to actually sue them. And one other thing that I don't have here, but that you should know, is you can hold the initial lender accountable for whatever the debt collector does. So if the debt collector is doing unethical things, you don't just have the bounds to sue the debt collector. You also have bounds to sue the original lender. This is also done as a precursor so that the lenders don't end up getting sued for whatever the third party debt collector does. So now I want to talk to you guys about debt management advisors. So two debt management advisors specifically, and that's going to be the credit attorney and the credit repair specialist. So the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is the requirements for whatever advisor that you have. And this is not just going to extend to it's not just going to extend to credit. You can actually use this for any kind of advisor that you need. So the first one is going to be, you have to make sure, I put agents, but it could be for anything. Okay, you have to make sure that they have prior knowledge of the different areas that I brought up in this tutorial. They know how to help you rebuild credit and how to manage debts. And that's going to be the competency part. Now, you also want to make sure that they have an attitude and temperament that matches with yours. And this could actually be more important. You want to make sure that they're competent, but if they have this, then that can help you get towards wherever your goals are a lot faster. So let's start off with the credit attorney. So like I told you guys before, any violations to the Fair Credit Reporting Act or Fair Debt Collections Act, it's a suable crime. Now, there are credit attorneys who know both laws and a myriad of different local laws that are about. Sorry, they should know a lot of different laws, not just on a federal level, but on your state or local level. And if you do need some advice, or if it even happens that they try to sue you, definitely consult a credit attorney. These guys can represent you in a court of law. And one thing that I have to say to you guys is, guys, know your rights. Don't let a debt collection or a lender bully you around when you really don't have to. Now, what I want to talk to you guys about is a credit repair specialist. So this is actually a newer term that I was seeing out there, and I actually really like this kind of individual. Essentially, what this individual does is they have a couple different roles. One of them is gonna collect all of debts, public and private, and then they're gonna make suggestions on how to reduce or eliminate debts, how to rebuild credit. They can draft, or they should be able to draft dispute letters. They should also be making suggestions on money management, and they should help you create a plan of attack. So over here in this particular tutorial, in this particular series, I taught you about a debt management plan. So that would be your quote unquote plan of attack. And the last thing that they should do is they should be able to keep you motivated so you can monitor and verify your progress. So guys, that's all I have for you. I want to thank you for watching this video. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up. In the comment, what I want you guys to tell me is one or two things. I want you guys to tell me, can you use the SOL, Statute of Limitations, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act to resolve any issue that you guys are having currently with credit or your finances? If you guys can, please put it in the comments below. Let me know what's going on there. If you guys want more personal finance tutorials, subscribe and you'll receive notifications anytime I upload new ones. And I have an initial goal of getting 1,000 subscribers. So guys, whatever you guys can do to help me get there, deeply appreciated. I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys really like this video. This is probably one of the most important ones that I'm doing. So if you guys want any more information about it, just let me know. And thank you once again for watching this video. Nothing else for me to say except I'll see you on the next video.